Welcome, EO Dallas, to Connecting the Journey. As y'all remember, the thesis of this show is as entrepreneurs, we're always driving forward. We're always looking to that next biggest thing. But very seldom do we really slow down and take a look at the past and take a look at those serendipitous God-wink moments that got us where we are today. And that's what we're going to do today. So like I said, slow down. Let's take a look at the past so we can move forward with a heart full of gratitude. And let me tell you, I'm really excited about our guest today, full of gratitude and appreciations for this guy. It's really interesting to see how things have come full circle. My guest today is Tony Hartyl. He's an EO alumni from back in the day. He's now in EO Austin. We're going to learn about his journey. I'm really, really excited to have Tony on the show and talk about some old times and talk about what we're looking forward to. Tony, welcome to the show, brother.
Gabe, good to see you. Long time. We've known each other for a few decades.
A few decades, man. So yeah, we met in college, and so I actually worked for Tony.
Gabe was in college. I was out of college.
I was in college. Yeah, I worked for Tony at one of his tanning salons in Denton, and yeah, it was a couple of 3 decades ago when you had that salon in Denton. And I tell you, as a college kid, that was a pretty awesome job to have. Having tanning salon to promote and barter with around town. It was a good time for sure.
Yeah, that's great. You're an outstanding employee, and I'm not surprised at how well you've done. So it's really has come full circle. It's great that you're in EO. It's great. I've obviously been able to witness your success. So I'm excited to share what I can that maybe is useful or helpful.
I tell you, Tony, we're going to talk about a lot of things on the show, but I tell you, I talk about you probably once a month because I meet with our new hires at Move Concierge, and I talk about culture and where you learn things from, and that was probably one of the biggest things I learned from you in college was that the way you treated people, the way you're intentional about experiences, and man, I tell you, it didn't matter. Every Saturday that I opened up and I was struggling to get there at 8 o'clock. You were calling 15 minutes before the store opened, full of energy, pumping you up, making sure the attitude was right, making sure the culture was right. So, man, I really appreciate the influence you've had on my life, and I talk about you to this day. So, really appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Well, let's jump in. So, Tony, it's going to be fun to hear this story and share this with EO Dallas. Let's start, I'd like to just start from the beginning. What was childhood like? And we talk about that because I think that your experiences through life, come through as you get older and in business. So what was your childhood like growing up in St. Louis?
Yeah. So I wrote a book called Selling Sunshine, 75 Tips, Tools, and Tactics to Becoming a Wildly Successful Entrepreneur. And one of the things I talk about in that book is really my childhood. I think that defined much of who I am today. I grew up with a single mother in the Midwest. She worked in a factory, and so there were a lot of challenging moments. We didn't have much. Literally, we moved several times while I was a child, and so one of the things that if I realized early on is if I wanted something, I'd have to work for it. And it wasn't that my mom didn't want to provide it. She just didn't have the ability to provide it. So literally I started working at 12 years of age. And I say that now having children, and it almost sounds crazy, but I think that really forged and created my work spirit to even this day, having been a CEO for as long as I have and building companies and selling them. It's just, I'm driven. It's a calling, a cultural thing. That work ethic is part of my formula for success. And so that started early on. And I think for sure that shaped who I am today.
What was your first childhood entrepreneur journey like? What was the first hustle you had?
Yeah, you'll love this. So I, in my book, I literally wrote a chapter about the big comfy chair, but I bought a chair for a few $100s. So it wasn't a lazy boy, but like a lazy boy. And at 12, I started mowing grass in the summer because St. Louis, Missouri. And then in the winter, I would shovel snow. So literally all my neighbors, I would either mow grass or shovel snow. And there was a lot of people that couldn't afford, like older ladies that lived by me, they couldn't afford having their snow shovel for $3. So I would shovel it, and they would give me hot cocoa, or they'd give me like a sweet or something like that. And my mom always told me, like, if they couldn't afford it, she still wanted me to cut their grass or shovel their snow, so I did it for free. But I think that all of those experiences of learning to hustle, work hard. I always learned, like, if I worked really hard, I could get anything I wanted, and those were small goals back in the day. But then I came to realize, like, I would never allow anyone to ever outwork me in life.
And that came through. One of your things that stood out was that you bought your first house when you were 19 years old.
Yeah.
And so you obviously had to have some hustle to be able to do that. What was that like buying that house at 19, and also, coming from the background that you came from, being able to do that?
Like, probably being made king of a country. I mean, it was so far beyond our realm of possibilities in my family, because we were renters. And I took a course called Wealth Without Risk, and I think it was $400, and it was by Charles Givens, and it was in St. Louis. And I went to the seminar, and I took, one of the things you'll always see me is I have a journal, and I take notes. I journal every single day. I've been doing it for decades, but I took copious notes. And again, going back to that philosophy of never allowing anyone to outwork you or out study or out learn you, I was able to put together a concept called bond for deed, which some people might be familiar with. But it allowed me to buy my first home at 19, a $46,000 condominium in Collinsville, Illinois. And when my mom, so I buy it at 19, I'm in college, and the first thing I do is I move my mother into the condominium with me. But it was like we had won the lotto, to be quite honest. Like, everything from that moment, I don't want to say totally shifted, but really everything from that moment just really expanded my aperture of what was possible. Because if I could buy a home at 19 for $46,000, then what couldn't I do? And with hard work and studying and really being focused and integral, I probably could do a lot of things, is what I came to believe.
And in having that experience so early on had to be very impactful on, seeing what's possible, but then being able to experience that with your mom had to be a huge impact in your life.
Yeah, that's right. So sharing that with my mom. And so I think, Gabe, one of the things, like, firsthand, and certainly I have about 1,500 employees, they know firsthand, is culture is really important to me. Like, it's really important to me. And I think some people could see that as a technique, and certainly it helps me get employees, keep employees. But it's also very natural, right? Like me speaking to you right now, I don't really have to think about what I'm going to say. It's this is who I am. And so learning at an early age to realize doing other things for other people that make them happy also gave me happiness. I learned that at a young age with my mom. Like, if I could do really wonderful things for her, it made her life better. And that really positioned me well to become an executive, not to just do nice things for people that deserved it, and try to do that on a regular basis. But that was one of the biggest life moments. I mean, this is the biggest thing probably ever, because it just opened up what was possible to buy a home at 19. I think of my son that just graduated from USC in LA. He's 23, and he's brilliant, right? He graduated at the top of his class, but I think he's 23. I could not imagine my son at 19 buying a home, but his experience, not better, not worse, just different. And so it really forged who I am today as a CEO, and to have done the things that I've done in business.
So you talked about culture, and that it's very important to you. And so I told you, look, you had a very big influence on my life, on culture, way I treated people, the work environment that I wanted to have for my company. Where did you learn that from?
Boy, that's a good question, Gabe. I think it was cultivated. I'm sure there were people that I resonated with. I think if you grew up in an environment the way I did, where your electricity's getting turned off, your water's turned off, I'm taking a bath at my neighbor's house, and doing that often. Number one, it humbles you. Number two, makes you become really grateful and appreciative. But I had a lot of challenges growing up, financially around us. So I became really grateful. And I know that word is used a lot now, but I really was grateful for everything. And so something I realized, or what's cultivated over time, was I was going to show up very grateful. I was going to show up very optimistic, organized, and have a plan. And if I did that, a lot of good things would happen. So I'm not really sure where I learned that from. I think it was cultivated over time that how I showed up was really intentional, and I would show up with a lot of energy, and I would show up in a positive way that wasn't really Pollyanna, like, the sky, everything's perfect, because I think sometimes for me, when people are that way, it's not authentic, but I would show up with my best self.
Yeah.
And I've tried to do that, now I'll be 57 this year.
And it's consistency and, like you said, showing up with a positive attitude, showing up with a plan, showing up engaged. And you do that over time, it just compounds on itself. So it becomes a great habit. I don't want to talk to you offline about your journaling and what that system's like, because you're right. I mean, ever since I can remember, you had a freaking book and you're writing that down. So it's right there.
Boys with me.
Always there. So you talk about coming full circle. I know you started your career in the fitness industry, right? So what was that life? What got you into that? I know that led into the tanning, but what got you into the fitness industry? And we have a special guest. Lee's going to be coming on the show a little bit later to talk about selling PIFs in the fitness industry.
Oh man, so that would be amazing. So that would be great. So, it wasn't a plan. I needed a job when I was in college, and there was a health club that had a sales counselor role. I took the job, and I liked it. I loved being in the fitness industry. I grew up as a really skinny little kid, so working out resonated with me. Being around positive people with great attitudes. I mean, it's hard not to be in a gym with people with great attitudes, classes going on, music. And so I just took a job, to pay for undergrad. And it's really funny. I started accelerating. They had a few health clubs in their chain, and they had stack rankings that would come out. Pretty antiquated, but you know how important that was with me, like always showing people where they were at and stacking them worst, first to worst, and letting kind of that tell the story. But
did you know I do that to this day? It's like all of our numbers are transparent, right? You got top to bottom. It is important. That encourages a culture of being humble, competitive,
Yeah,
and so
performance culture.
Yeah,
that's right, a performance culture. And maybe if we get time, I'll talk a little bit about how I think about that. But I was usually towards the top on that, and then eventually, in that business, if you're a good salesperson, you must be a good manager. Well, I was 18 years old, right? And I think about an 18-year-old kid now, and they were like, "Hey, could you manage this business?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, what's it pay? And it was more money, right? And so literally I went off to manage that business, and that's how I started making money. And literally my classes, I'm not proud of it, but took a back seat really to my ambitions in business, because I had never made that kind of money before. And to go from 18 to 19 and 19 making that kind of money, and then buying a new car and having a condominium, it just was revolutionary for me. I'd never seen anyone in my family have those type of things. And the connection for me was showing up, working really hard, doing my best, keeping my word, and like overperforming in ways that sports was really helpful for me growing up, that allowed me to, I think, achieve what I did in fitness. And then when I graduated from undergrad, I thought I was going to go to law school, and I took my LSAT, and one of my racquetball partners was the district attorney in Illinois, and Dwayne really was like, "Are you sure you want to be an attorney, Tony?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Why?" And Dwayne was one of the first African American district attorneys, and I'm like, "Dwayne, because that's where the money's made. I want to be an attorney." And he said, "I would recommend that you take a year off. You can always go back, take your LSAT, and go get a job." And at that time, there was a group of consultants called Sales Makers recruiting for a fitness chain in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. They were in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Iowa City, Fort Myers, Florida, Columbia, South Carolina, and they had a job for director of marketing. for $36,000 a year. Now you have to understand this is like 1991, and $36,000 a year. I'm like,
I'm
where
in.
I don't even know where Cedar Rapids is, but I'm going there. And so I took that job at 21, was making $36,000 a year, and I was really fortunate. The guy that hired me, Dave Taylor, who was the CFO of the company, he hired me, and I right away was able to work with someone that had a strong background in accounting and finance. And at the time, they didn't call it data; it was just really math and information. But being a marketer, I wanted data, and you have to understand in the '90s we didn't have data analytics or we didn't have digital marketing. We threw a lot of marketing at things, and we hoped that we increased the volume, right? But we weren't able to tie it back to what was happening. Barcodes weren't around, nothing like that. And so we didn't have a way to study it. But I was informed on how to use information through Dave. And over the next few years, at 23, I became the vice president of sales and marketing. I ran the entire company. And so I had 400 employees. I had 7 gyms. I lived 7 to 10 days in Iowa, South Carolina, and then Florida, and I was on a rotation. And so those years, those were formidable years because everything I had done for my childhood really prepared me that the work was never going to get in the way. The only place you're going to find success before work is in the dictionary. Like you're going to go to work and you're going to work hard. And so 7 to 10 days, I didn't have a problem working 6 to 7 days a week. And I didn't have a problem, touching people and going out there and really being field focused, like not being in an office, pushing reports out through a fax, but really getting out in the field and inspiring my people. And one of the things that I realized in the fitness industry, in any business, is one thing that we all have in common. And I don't care if it's the technicians, the daycare people, the people in accounting or learning and development. One of the things that we all have in common, regardless of the department, is every person is looking to improve the lives of their family, right? Improve their lives. So that was the place that I always connected with people. Is I'm like, if you're here, I can help you get there, right? And do you want to get there? And most people are like, yeah, I want to get there. What's it take to get there? And I would always start off with work. Okay, so work and high integrity work and impactful work and consistent work. And I would drive these concepts home every single day throughout the organization, and that became effective over time, and that became what led to what I define now as the performance culture. But always knowing where you stand, always having an objective scorecard every single day, knowing where you stand, and then being coached and having somebody supportive or having a team supportive to help you get from here to there. And so that's what led me into the fitness industry. And then at 26, I came out of the fitness industry, and there were tanning salons in Dallas, Texas, that were going bankrupt, and I had an opportunity to acquire them. And I thought, what if I took all the ideas in fitness, like reoccurring revenue, billing people, membership, and took the same cultural approach and marketing approach and used that in the tanning industry? How could we do? And in May 11th, 1995, that's when we opened Planet Tans in Dallas, Texas, which you were one of the early employees there in Denton, Texas.
Man, I tell you, taking that, everything you learned in fitness, you could really see that in the culture of Planet Tan, right? I mean, I still remember stripping the freaking floors. I'm like, those floors look fine. Why do we need to strip them? It didn't matter. Every week, stripping the floors, all the maintenance, the place smelled good, it looked good. And it was, during that time, there wasn't a high bar there, right? And you came and raised the bar and gave a great experience to everyone. And I worked in, like I said, I worked in Denton, so it was a little bit different at being a college town, but it was really, we were really elevated above anyone else in Denton.
Well, there were 17,000 tanning salons in the United States. And at that time, the average tanning salon did around $200,000, highly fragmented industry. And we went on to produce 5X, $1 million minimum dollars per facility, up to $2 million at 35 to 40% margins, which is just mind blowing for people in business that a tanning salon could do that. But what we did, Gabe, and what you did so well is number one is you could teach business to people, but you couldn't teach someone how to be outgoing, how to like talk to people, how to really care. And so when you talk about stripping floors, for a college kid, you might not even clean your own room, but that was our product, right?
Yep.
Our product was the member experience, and we had to really, and I think every business, you really have to think about what your product is. And the product, we didn't sell a hamburger or an iPhone or anything like that. We sold an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And many people probably listening to that do the same thing. And so you really have to be clear what your product is and make sure that your product offering, you're increasing the bar and that people understand exactly what your standards are, because you have to have a floor or you have to have a minimum that you're not willing to go below. And you know that with me. And so for me, it's all about standards. And the standard is the standard. And when it comes to culture, that comes down to the standards. That's how you create a performance culture, is through standards.
Yeah, and that experience and that standard and what Planet 10 stood for, that resonated in your marketing. And if anybody was around in the DFW area during what, 95 to 10 years, 95 to
2008.
2008, you knew the name, right?
Yeah.
Through sports teams, through the unique advertising, the
Through
Crunch,
Cuban,
yeah,
for everything.
the Crunch Fitness, the voice of Planet 10. Wasn't he the guy that did the marketing for Crunch?
Yeah, it's David Olbinjensky. He's also the Ford. He's voice from Monster Truck that used Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. And I was driving across the Midwest at like 21 years of age and heard this voice, and I thought, oh my God, like who is that? And I tracked him down, David, and he's in Troy, Michigan, is still the voice of my brand today, which is the voice of that we hired. That if, anytime you hear a Monster Truck or usually a Ford ad, that's David Olbinjensky. So, but it was thinking about this distinction, right, in culture and in service, and thinking about that from a brand standpoint. Like, what did we stand for? How would we differentiate ourselves in a way that was relevant and mattered to people? And for us, we really weren't selling, oxidizing the pigmentation of your skin, right? We were selling like you're going to look more attractive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your eyes are brighter, your teeth are whiter, right? You look better with a tan. And we were selling, if you could get here, you'll get there. And
Yeah.
that's what still to this day, we believe is if you can get here, we'll help you get there.
Talk about how you did some of the unique things with the marketing with the sports teams in Dallas. I've heard the stories. It's phenomenal, especially with the Mavs being in the finals. It's fun to look back about how you made this happen. But you were very iconic in Dallas sports.
Yeah, it was incredible because you think like here is like when I sold the company, there were 17 locations. But when you were with us, I want to say maybe we were at 6 or 7. And one of the things that we thought about, like if you could really go out and make an impact in business through your brand, who would be the few calls that you would need to make, and who would you need to connect with? And everyone's not important. Who would be the few people who are important? And luckily in Dallas, Texas, there's, at that time, there were 3 major sports teams. It was the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Stars, and the Dallas Mavericks. And at that time, I got to know the vice president of the Dallas Stars, and we were fortunate enough to start co-marketing with the Dallas Stars, which eventually led to the first time anyone's ever branded a cheerleading team. They were called the Dallas Stars Ice Girls. We branded those girls to become the Planet 10 Ice Girls. And then the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders were doing CMT, Country Music Television, making the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. And they were familiar with our brand. And I ended up getting to know Kelly Finglass and Charlotte Jones, and the daughter of Jerry Jones. And they ended up putting me as one of the judges on making the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. Now, let's be honest here. I don't know the criteria that goes into making like a great dance routine, but I think they trusted me enough to say who would be great to represent the brand of the Dallas Cowboys. And all of those things eventually led to Mark Cuban and I meeting, and me being, really candid with Mark. And Mark was trying to convince me to, sponsor the team, but 6'7" guys really wasn't like what my brand was going for. What my brand wanted to associate with was cleverness, cheekiness, irreverency, and that was Mark. And so I convinced Mark, and it wasn't easy. Mark was really open-minded, and Mark loved, or in the early years, to associate with really fun brands. And Mark had an open mind, and we put a multi-year sponsorship together where Mark used his likeness in the campaigns. And Mark did radio, print, billboard, even a voice blast, which now you think about voice blast on cell phones, like probably cringes some people up. But Mark was so open-minded that he was willing to try a little bit of everything with our brand, because he understood we weren't a tanning company. We were a company that was probably one of the best brands at the time in Dallas, Texas, and he wanted to associate with fun brands that were really progressive. And it had a massive impact, certainly differentiating ourselves from the competition.
Yeah, and it fits with your brand. It fits with what you're trying to do. And I love the line you said, every time the cheerleaders were mentioned, it was the Planet Tan Ice Girls, right?
Yeah,
and so your name gets repeated every time. Hey, look, Tony, another thing that's been very evident to me over, knowing you over the couple of decades is team is very important to you. It's fun. Right. I got to tell you, dude, it's very funny that as we're going back through this journey, I'm recognizing more and more things that you've had impact on me on. But one thing I remember is, like, you always talked about your team. You always had long-standing relationships with your team, but it was always very important for you to put a team of rock stars together, and knowing that your executive team, the team behind the scenes, had to be first class.
Yeah, that's right. So we're all out there, and even to this day, Gabe, look at the relationship we've had. We've connected in Jackson Hole. We've stayed connected. Like, I think one of the things that you know about me, and I certainly know about you, is if you asked me for something, I would do everything possible to help make it happen, right? And you're the same way. So I think, that takes time to develop those kind of relationships, right? So you need to know who those people are. But I think when you can find people that do what they say they're going to do, when they say they're going to do it, in the manner they say they're going to do it, you want to hang on to those people, because they're rare, they're special, and you really want to hang on to those relationships. So first off, I value our relationship, right? Genuinely. And when I think about people that I hire, right, you're really looking for someone that's going to fit your values. And really, when you're interviewing, you're thinking, like, are they going to be successful doing the job? Are they going to produce the outcomes I want, right? Ultimately, that's what we're all interviewing for. But I'm really looking for a holistic leader, someone with the head, heart, and guts. I want someone that, they've got the smarts to do the job, right? The intellectual curiosity. I want them to be really curious and be able to problem solve. But I also want them to have the heart, right? And the heart means they really have to care. They have to give a shit. And if it's transactional, people feel that. And you don't develop any long-term relationship or transactional. So it has to be relational. And I've always thought about my businesses as not transactional, but relationships, right? And so I even know my first customer ever in the history of Planet Tan, even in Plano, Texas, because that's how I naturally think, right? And so when I think about head, heart, and then I think about guts, I think about courage is people like that are willing to kind of stretch themselves. And when I think about courage, it's about going beyond your realm of comfort, either with like what you're doing based on knowledge or activity, and really having the courage to be transparent, candid, but do what's necessary. And I think when you build teams of people like that, you're assembling like-minded people that are probably going to work well with one another. And synergistically, we're going to work better as a team, right? And I do think of it as a team because you're coaching your team, you're recruiting for your team. And I think if the people listening to this, they're all most likely CEOs or presidents. That's your number one job is to build the team. There is nothing more important that I do than build teams. And that's literally hiring, coaching, developing, and removing people from my team. So how you go about building the team, I think will determine how successful or how fast you become successful.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, entrepreneurs, I guess, in this grind culture that we live in, it's all about the entrepreneur, right? And sometimes they put themselves first versus their team, and that they have to be, front and center all the time versus, for me, I think it's the magic that happens behind the scenes with the dynamic team that you built that allows us to do anything, right? If I look back at Planet Tan, I mean, you had people that you recruited from the fitness industry that was on your team. And I tell you, man, when you talked about him, you were like, I got this stud that's doing this, we're doing this. I mean, you really pumped them up and showed a lot of gratitude to them. And I think that, you know, I want to get into what you're doing now, and it says it in your name, Undefeated Tribe, how important team is. But looking back at the sale of Planet Tan, how important was that team, and do you think you could have got the multiple you got without having that squad in place?
No, it's impossible. So one of the things that it's a challenge, right? Because as founders, it is about like us taking a bold leap forward, figuring things out, sleepless nights, many days, many hours, many days, literally with our head in our hands. And it's just like, it just is all consuming, right? Being an entrepreneur. And it just is. But at some point, to scale, you need to move beyond yourself to the team, right? And for Planet Tan and for Undefeated Tribe, one of the things I learned was if I was going to scale, the company had to be much bigger than the CEO or this face of the company. And really not just the face, the person that was making all the decisions, because that could also be a bottleneck, but really had to bring in complementary or even better skills than I had to help the company scale. So for us, it would have been impossible, Gabe, had I not built a finance team, an accounting team, a marketing team, an operations team, a L&D team, an HR team, right? And a facilities team. Like all those things were critical to scaling that company. And you think, well, it's a tanning salon. Like how hard can that be? Well,
It's hard.
that's how you're trying to do it. I was trying to do, and we ended up producing the highest AUVs ever in the history of the industry. The industry's never produced those numbers. And when everyone says like, well, how? And I was like, well, we worked hard, we had fun, we made history, and we did it very consistently. They're like, yeah, but what else? And it's all those little things done over time with consistency is really what creates that separation and that gap in business.
Yeah, and I think you said something. The company's bigger than the CEO or the founder, and I think that's hard for people to understand. For me, when I look at leaders to bring in the company, I want somebody that's been there, that's already done it, that's going to come in and teach me, right? It's going to expand us. That gets it, that understands the vision, and that's also something very good you've been able to project and to cast in your companies is the vision. Like here's where we're going. Right? And here's how we're going to get there. And that gets everybody on the bus. That gets the right people on the bus, and it gets the wrong people off.
And it happens all the time. I do think it's incredibly important to consistently cast vision in everything you do. Yep. Like, look, I'm the CEO, right? And I have my Crunch logo shirt on, right? And it's not because I'm on with you. It's every single day.
It's your uniform.
And it's my uniform. And I think what we do speaks so loudly, we don't need to talk, right? Like our example is communication, right? And so we have to ensure that we're communicating the right things, that here's where we're at, here's where we're going, here's the things that are going to get us there. And I think the other thing that I used to struggle with, and I still am challenged with, but not as much, and the reason probably why I've scaled so quickly in this company is I realized only 20% matters. The other 80% is noise, and I'm going to say no to it, right? And that means like I almost say no to everything. I don't do it. And it's not that I'm not open to listening to new ideas, but we only have a few things in business that are really going to impact. And I don't need to be the one spitting out ideas all the time. I need to be the one bringing everyone together on a very narrow focus on a few ideas done very well. And I think it's to your earlier point, it's about hiring, right? It's about attraction, acclimation, development, care, retention, right? And you go, whoa, attraction, acclimation, development, care. Well, you could spend years just on that, right? And you don't need a new idea. Like, how do we get better at attracting the right people? How do we make sure they're onboarded correctly, right? And how do we make sure that they grow and they can get promoted or do better in their jobs and earn more money, right? And how do we keep the best people around that we want to keep around? Boy, you could spend a lifetime just on that,
Yeah.
right? If you're trying to do it well. So so I think the leader's job is to cast vision, but it's also to ensure that there's a lot of no being said to outside distractions. It's really to keep the team focused.
Well, and that's the point about having a clear vision, mission, and purpose, right? Mission and purpose
Right.
equals vision. That's the filter that you can say no to. Is this going to get me closer to my goal? Yes or no?
Right.
Nope. See you later. Yes. All right. Let's dig into it. So, all right. So you sold Planet 10 in 2008.
2008. Yep.
November
18th. So if you remember, 2008, Gabe, was one of the worst recessions ever, and it was tough for people to get jobs. Everyone, on my team was concerned they were going to try to retrade the deal, and it was all cash. It never got retraded. And on November 18, 2008, I had just turned 40, and I literally, my finger, I'm an ex-boxer. You can see it's a little twisted. I always say it's broke because I kept hitting refresh. Refresh.
Yeah, still there? Is it still there?
Yeah. And that was just such a milestone moment in my life. Like, oh my gosh, here's this kid from the Midwest. His mom worked in a factory. This is what makes our country so great, that like, it's unbelievable. Like, I could have never, if you would have went back to me as a kid and said, hey, one day at 40, you're going to sell for tens of millions of dollars in cash, and you're going to never have to work again, and you're going to be able to take care of your mom and your family and everybody you love. I would have thought, like, this is some kind of movie. Like, it doesn't happen to anyone. And that's what's so great about the entrepreneurial journey, is it really is possible.
It is, man. One of your things was, what would you tell your younger self? And it was that everything's going to be fine, man. I think as entrepreneurs, we've got.
I think all of us need to do that. Like, go to our younger self and say, everything's going to work out. It's going to be okay. And we need to be the ones as CEOs. And I'm not talking about not being vulnerable or authentic or transparent, but when the captain of the boat is going over these 10-foot swells, and the mice are shaking around like mice in a tin can, and everyone's getting sick, and are we going to be okay? They got to look to you. And I don't know, I always envision myself like soaked in a cigar soak that's not lit, and everyone's looking to me to say, is it going to be all right? And I'm like, I got this.
Hell yeah, it's going to be all right.
I want everybody to go down below. You're probably going to get sick, but in a few hours, things are going to get a little bit calm, and I'll get us through it. And I think that's the role of the CEO. And we've got to be the one to kind of bring assurance to everyone that things are going to be okay. And we really got to believe it and do the work to make sure that things are okay.
That's the tough part. When you're up on deck all by yourself, you got to believe that things are going to be okay.
Well, that's why that question is so good, because isn't it crazy how usually, most of the time, everything just sort of works itself out?
Man, I tell you, well, the last 6 months of my life has been a lot of that, man, and just has been letting go. And like, the word for the year has been timing. Like, things have just worked out. Like, things happen as they're supposed to happen, and us worrying about it and being fearful about it doesn't do any good, right? It does no good to you or the people around you. So,
no.
What'd you do for 10 years when in your retirement? Tell us about what that was like. And I always joke, like, how long did it last, right? How long did
lasted a decade? It lasted a decade. I tend to do things, so this is important. I've only had really 3 jobs in my life. So if I commit to something, even retirement, I'm committed. So I tend to think in decades, literally. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. It's going to take me a while. And so one of the first things that I did was, I was married for about a football season. And so I had a son, and we had a son, and he lived in New Orleans. And so I started spending a lot more time with my son, and had figured out how to get more visitation and time with my son. And that led to one of the greatest things during my retirement possible that I'll circle back to. But I traveled the world, right? I hit over 30 countries. I became a sub-3 marathoner, big mountain climber. I ended up buying a home in Jackson Hole. My son, due to Katrina, They moved to Wyoming. I bought a house in 2010 in Jackson Hole, and that eventually led to my son, living with me in high school, and I raised him all through high school in Jackson Hole. But I did a few things that were interesting between retirement and then. I started a winery in Argentina, in Mendoza, Argentina. I was there mountain climbing and ended up having a longer stay than I thought. I fell in love with the long hair distraction, and that was interesting, and ended up sticking around in Argentina. I wrote a book that was published in 2011, Selling Sunshine. But I
Great
really,
book.
thank you. I really appreciate that. And I know Vern Harnish, that a lot of people are connected to. I'm always appreciative of Vern. Vern talks about the book quite a bit. But, Vern introduced me to a lady that owned a bicycling company. So I cycled around the world with her organization. And I just spent time really connecting with friends and doing things that I never had the time to do when I was in college, or certainly after college. When I ran a company, Gabe, when I ran Planet Tan, and I'm being candid. When people say like, well, what else do you do? I really had no hobbies. I mean, I'm telling the truth. So I think I was pretty boring. Like I couldn't relate with people. I didn't watch TV shows. All I would do is work, read books, and work out, and then repeat it. And it sounds like pretty boring and lonely, but for me, you have to think where I came from and to where I'm at today. Without that trade-off, without that sacrifice, I'm glad I didn't go for beers in the evening. You worked with me. That's just not who I was.
No.
And unless it was elevating my team, celebrating my team, right?
Oh yeah, you always did great weekend nights out, right? I mean, if you hit a goal, it was limo, it was club.
$100, send them up in limos, go to the club, everybody drink, have great dinners, because like what you're wanting to do is say in ways you want to say thank you to the person in a way that they appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And you have to think about, my audience was younger people, so I had to appreciate them in the way they wanted to be appreciated. But I never really had any hobbies. And then when I retired, I really didn't know what I was interested in. So I went and got my pilot's license, learned to blow glass, write a book, start a winery, and eventually moved to Jackson Hole full time and raised my son. And my son just graduated from USC in LA, and he'll be moving to Austin for a job here in about a month. So I think that whole period of really being a father to my son was almost being like a father to myself. I didn't grow up with a dad. And so I was able to be the dad that I wish maybe I would have had. And I was able to really go really deep with my son and be there as not only his dad, but a mentor, a friend, and help him through academics and help him in sports and just help him become the man that he is today. He literally just got back 2 days ago from his trip with his fraternity brothers. You'll appreciate this. Yeah. They hit 5 countries. They were in Ibiza a few days ago, listening to Calvin Harris. And I'm like, boy, to be young and be in Ibiza and listen to Calvin Harris. But, he has a different experience at his age than I would have had. And that's okay. Everyone's on their own journey, but I'm so proud of him. So I had a lot of time. But by the time I was 50, when he was heading off to college, I had to ask myself, like, what am I going to do? I'm living in this big house on the side of the mountain. And that's when I revisited Crunch Fitness, because they were selling franchises. And everyone was against me buying a franchise. They were like, you're the guy that can create a brand out. And I just didn't have it in me at 50 to create a brand from scratch. And it was much easier for me to buy the rights of Crunch Fitness and them allow me to do a lot of things with the brand rather than just start a brand from scratch.
Yeah, I messed with you when when you started coming out. I was like, oh, round 2, ding ding, it's ready to go, and people think about that, and that's kind of really one of the things with this show is that we want to re-engage with entrepreneurs that are maybe in their round 2 or thinking about what round 2 looks like, right? And for me, when I think forward to that, I'm like, man, you get to start something either from scratch or whatever you want to do, but you get to do it so much quicker. And I know you're going to touch on this, but it's the knowledge of who what you've done, your experience is compounding. The other thing is money or someone else's money, right? You've earned the right to either put your own money in or start playing with other people's money. And man, I tell you did that in a big way. What you've been able to accomplish with Crunch and the Undefeated Tribe is historical. I think you broke another record, right? And if I look at it, it goes back to the same fundamentals, man. You started with a very focused plan. You started with a team. It's the name. Like, talk to us about the name of that. That's very unique and very distinct. Like, how'd that name come about?
Yeah, I think if you look at LLCs in the fitness business, it's, I don't know, ABC Fitness or whatever fitness. And I always thought, like, if I had a slogan or a mantra in life, going back to my childhood, it would always be no white flags, and like no white flags. And so when I think about team versus, family, I've always thought about like family, like my son, I'm not able to fire him, right? And he's my kid, right? So I always think about team. And when I think about undefeated, I don't think like, oh, we're the best in the world, although we aspire to be the best in the world and do the best. I think about not quitting, being beaten but never being defeated, right? Doesn't mean we win at everything, but we don't give up. And tribe is more about a community aspect rather than an individual aspect. So undefeated tribe, and then the tagline is no white flags. But it really goes to the sense about how I think about culture, and I think about the organization, even how everything is set up in the organization to really build a culture that really sort of rejects the wrong people. Like, people get in here and they know when they don't fit, and everyone, it's like bringing a foreign substance into your body. It just rejects it. It's like they might get in, but it goes out pretty quick. And we want a culture like that. And so,
And
yeah. And then I think about what we were able to do. One of the things you touched on, I think about this, Gabe. I think about like wealth. I think about credibility is the new wealth, right? And I've always been, I really do. And I think, like, hopefully you feel this way. I think you do, and most people do. Like, when someone says something, like, I want to have credibility, right? And I want to be a high character leader, right, with integrity. And I think credibility is everything. And so when I came out of retirement, I had no shortage of opportunities, right? I had, people wanting me to run their companies. And I would say, honestly, like, I was able to 10X rather than go back. I was able to accomplish in 1/3 the time in 5 years, 10 more times than I was able to do in 14 years. And it's the credibility, right? It's certainly the right who. Like, I knew who, but I also knew like why. And I was able to double down on why much better, and who. So my why kind of led me to my who and what. And then having capital, certainly having the resources, and really having that scar tissue built up, like making mistakes and going, oh boy, I'm not going to do that again,
yeah.
and I've learned from that. And I still have those oh boy moments where I'm like, boy, I should learn by now. But I think you have decades of that when you're at my age and you've been in business, or at least you should, know what you should be focused on rather than what not focused on.
Yeah, you learned all the lessons in the 14 years, and it's just a accumulation of all that knowledge and focus. And man, it's in the name. Like, if somebody makes it into your culture, if somehow they slips through, yeah, they're going to be gone real quick. But that name is such a filter for everything, right? The vision, the mission, the purpose, the culture, where we're going, that attracts the right people. That resonates with people,
Yes.
So tell us what, obviously I know this, but so tell us kind of what you did in the 5 years, the records you broke, and kind of where you're going in the future here with Crunch.
Yeah, you bet. So 2018, I opened my first gym, and in 8 months we had 10,000 members. Well, that was a record, right? Like 10,000 members in 8 months. People, that just doesn't happen, right? And so we were really clear on how to market, right? And we thought about marketing probably a little bit different than most people in our space. We also started doing alignment. Vince Young in Austin, he's a partner. So Vince is Hall of Fame, athlete, like, in the College Hall of Fame, one of, the most notable athlete ever to come out of certainly Austin, but I think probably one of the best college athletes of all time. I think, objectively that's been said. And so we just started partnering with the right people. But over a short amount of time, we have 20 gyms right now. We'll be at 27 gyms by the end of the year. And these gyms are anywhere from 30,000 to 53,000 square feet. And so we we'll open, like I said, we have 20 gyms now. We'll have 7 more by the end of the year. And next year we'll open another 15. We'll be at 43. And then we're going to try to strategically grow 17. We're in Oklahoma and Texas right now. And we're going to St. Louis, Missouri next year. That's my hometown. So I'm excited to go back and create a lot of jobs there. But I think so much of what we've done here is, to your earlier point, we've really created a performance culture. And when I think about performance culture, I think about this. I think about standards, right? I think about communication. I think about metrics, and I think about the cadence of all that. Like, what's the rhythm? And so when we set this performance culture, we became very clear, like day one, like, hey, these are our standards. Like, these are our metrics. Here's how we're going to communicate, and here's the rhythm of it, the cadence of it. And we're really clear on our performance culture. And I think a lot of our success has to do with just that simple understanding of, like, what are we going to celebrate, and what are we not going to tolerate? What are we not going to do? And we've been really focused on that. And we've been able. We were lucky in September of last year, 2023. I sold the majority stake to a private equity firm for the highest multiple at the time in the history of the fitness business, and we were really appreciative that a group found us to be so valuable. We were scaling. We had a lot of capital, myself and Alex Chang, my co-founder, because we both had successful exits. But we knew if we had the right partner and we could have a larger balance sheet, we could scale more rapidly. And that's what's happened. We partnered. We just syndicated a bank deal with Fifth Third as the lead. We just did another $60 million in debt. We have a bunch of dry powder for our openings, and we'll be opening, like I said, 15 gyms next year. That's 900 new employees. So awesome. Just next year, 900 just next year. And so when I think about, like, what am I doing? I also have to remind myself, boy, Gabe, I'm like paying rent to the universe, right? Like, I'm creating a lot of jobs. You have to think, a kid coming from the Midwest, and his mom working for a factory in St. Louis. I remember a period of like almost a year, my mom was unemployed and we were on welfare. And like, I still remember that stuff to this day. And I think about the responsibility I have for the families that work for me, because I remember, being a kid and my mom not having a job and us getting welfare and her being devastated when the factory had to shut down for whatever reasons and she was unemployed. And I think, you know what, like, I am like never going to allow that to happen if I can prevent it here. I can never say never, but boy, I'm going to do everything humanly possible to provide a safe place for people to work and have consistency, and a place where they can lift their family up and provide a better experience for their entire family, whether that means housing is better, education is better, their car is better, they want to give back more to their church. But I want to be known for helping people have a better life. That's really important to me.
And I think
I'm doing it through my gyms, but I mainly do it through my employees.
Yeah, and I think it's the success of the money is a byproduct of that, right? If you're focusing on people first, and the way you talked about making their lives better, enriching their lives, everything else is a byproduct. We talk about, we're able to sell through our service. Like, we've got to provide an amazing experience, and the fact that we get to make money on it, that's a byproduct, right? And obviously the formulas worked, man. You talked about, you had a record multiple in tanning, you got a record multiple in fitness. The formula works. And I'll tell you, after having this conversation, I think everybody can make this conclusion that the formula starts with vision and people, right? You have a very clear vision. You're attracting the right people. You're investing in those people. And I'll tell you, man, look, you're marketing on social and things like that. Your people are freaking excited. They are pumped. They're proud to be part of this tribe. And you can just see it in them. You can see it in the way that they act and the way they represent the company. And that all comes from you, brother.
Yeah, I think everyone has, right? Like, like Mary Kay Ash said, like, everyone has a lanyard around their neck that says, like, please make me feel important. And I think if you do that in an authentic way, and you always remember that, like, that person just wants to be seen, right? They just want to be seen. And you remind yourself, and it's authentic, like, hey, man, I see you, or hey, I see you, and hey, I care. And I think you do that over time, and you get enough people that do that over time. And I think that's what you see in LinkedIn with Undefeated Tribe, with all the employees posting things all the time. And we just, oh, by the way, a big group just came back from one of the Planet Tan contests we used to run, Can Do Cancun. And Lee was certainly, Mike Grip, all those guys went to that back in the day. But a big group just came back from Cancun. And it's just fun having the legacy of these contests and seeing new groups of people go through and their spouses or partners go through it. And they come back and they're like, wow, I understand the sacrifices my partner's making. It's a great company. And they feel good about it. So it's not we and them. It's like us as a team. And that's the deal.
There's another one, dude. We've been doing incentive trip for 7 years now. Spouses invited to every single one of them, right? They gotta know, they gotta be part of the family, and I'll tell you, I'll close on this, on the high performance culture. I saw you speak at a BOE event, and obviously knowing your story, but man, the high performance culture really hit me in my face, and the difference between, family and team. And we've kind of, you're gracious enough to spend some time with our team, but we've kind of defined that for us is that, high performance culture is high standards, high accountability, high opportunity, and high care and love, right? And we were kind of doing that backwards, right? We were giving all this care and love before people put the work in and before they lived up to the standards. And so we switched that. And man, it's been an interesting 3 months since we've implemented that. And I think it's going to be a game changer for us.
I think without accountability, there is no floor to standards. So you have to have standards and accountability. And I think it's reasonable to have accountability. And I think people want to know where you stand and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But with standards, you have to have a floor. There has to be a minimum that we're not going below this. We're not going outside of this. And nothing is going to allow that. We can't allow our people to do it. We cannot allow our own performance to fall below that, because we have to be self-accountable as well as leaders, right? And so I think what it does is it creates a healthier culture, and it's clear expectations rather than things being fuzzy, like, oh, I can get by here, but I can't get by there.
Yeah, we call it transparent communication, right? Because if you're not hitting that standard, we need to have a very transparent conversation with you on, if you didn't know the standard, what it is and what you need to do to hit it.
And that can be just how you're showing up, right? Like I was on 15, 20 minutes before our call even started because, number one, I value the relationship with you. I appreciate you. I also want to be prepared, and anything could happen. Maybe my internet doesn't work, or anything could happen. So I have to show up with intention. I have to show up prepared, and I need to show up optimistic, right? So it's also just, how do we show up? What's the standards with how we show up for one another?
Yep, I agree. Well, Tony, look, we could talk for another hour, man, but I know your schedule is tight. I do appreciate the time you spent with us. And man, I'll tell you, this has been a great journey for me to reflect back with you and see how you've impacted my life in different ways. And I'll tell you, if you've done this for me, I can't imagine the thousands of people that you've impacted through your life.
It's insane, Gabe. You have to think right now, I'm looking at you, right? You worked with me in Denton, like I remember, and now you're the CEO, and now you're a CEO and EO. Now you're a CEO and EO interviewing me. Like, think about how full circle that is. That's insane, right? And so I think you're doing an outstanding job. I'm so proud of you, right? Like, I just am. I'm so proud of you. So I hope anyone that watches this, they figure out a way to pay it forward and like inspire some other people.
Well, I think this was full of God wink moments, this conversation. So hopefully it's going to inspire others. And again, man, really appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing what round 2 and 3 brings to us.
Thanks, Gabe. All right. Take care.
Thanks, TH. Love you, brother.
Love you, buddy. Bye.
Guys, thanks for joining us on Connect the Journey. It's been a really good show for me to look back and see those things that how Tony impacted my life, but lots of lessons along the way. So take some time, look back, see those things that maybe you forgot about, spend some time in that moment so you really can move forward with a full heart of appreciation and gratitude. Thanks so much for joining us.